In today's video, we are going to be taking a look here at all three of our major models. And just like yesterday, we're going to be taking a look also at the temperature anomalies at the end, where there is some cold air and some warmer air on the way at times. It's going to be a very flip-floppy pattern. So we'll take a look at that and give you guys more specifics as to when to expect the most cold and the most warmth. Now we can tell there is a very interesting jet stream pattern here, doing something like this, kind of rising up the further east you go. Very gradual there. And this is basically in due part here to mostly this Gulf energy moving up and really bringing the southeast ridge throughout these regions. And there is also some Pacific influence here as well. This is all leading towards more moisture for these storms and also more warmth around. We see this northern jet kind of doing a deep dive here in the west and then quickly turning around and kind of moving with these areas here, kind of more towards the northeast here. So we see plenty of areas involved. We can all obviously see the very major ice storm still taking place to this point, and that's going to continue taking place. We see it kind of recycle and start to bring more ice towards Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas again. And then that spreads a little bit through, again, kind of this more deeper south area through Tennessee and Kentucky. And then we see kind of round three start up here for Texas and Oklahoma again. So this 1, 2, 3 punch through Oklahoma and Arkansas. And then we're finally said and done with that ice. So we can see what we're kind of left with actually is going to be a little bit of a more trough in the east after this is all said and done. But this moisture slides just below the trough, so where no snow ends up happening because of this. We will take a look at the total freezing rain in just a minute. And then we're left very, very quiet until we get a Pacific storm around the 6th of February. We see this moving in as primarily snowfall, obviously, for your Cascades and Northern Rockies. This low is somewhere right about here is a 940 or 994, not 940. That'd be terrible. A 994 millibar low pressure center there over Canada. Now, as we continue on, this does become a bit of a clipper system, kind of some broad low pressure through here, bringing snowfall to portions of the plains and also portions of Canada there. And as we continue things on, we see the southeast ridge plays a huge role in the upcoming pattern because this is diverting a lot of that snowfall to move far north of the northeast here for a lot of these areas. And honestly, there's a better chance at severe weather in the east than there is at snowfall over the next 10 days. As we can see, there is a rising motion here, bringing a lot of that moisture and warmth. We see this cold front swinging underneath the storminess, and this is going to really bring the chance at severe weather. We see that take place, potential severe weather in here. And then we see kind of a resurgence where we have a warm front here, cold front here, potentially more severe weather and thunderstorms kind of rolling up the East Coast here right around the 10th. So again, two severe weather events, potentially zero snowfall events. Certainly very, very unwinter-like. Very interesting, though, to say the least. The jet stream is taking a deep dive into kind of the deep south here and then really quickly rising up. I just don't know how it avoids the east this much. It's very incredible. Now, total precipitation, you can see things picking up out west due to these storms that are moving in. And we could tell because of the reds and browns showing up that there is going to be more and more storminess moving in through these areas. Still, we have a lot more on the way for kind of the southeast and deeper south here, as you can see, where it's pretty clear there's going to be moisture heading off the east coast into the southeast, even in through the Pacific into Texas. A lot of moisture on the way for these areas in here. I don't know why that was so odd here. Right in there, we can see there's going to be a frequent storm track over the next 10 days through this area. Now, total snowfall, or better yet, we're going to move right into the accumulated freezing rain. First off, we do get a little bit at some point during the next 10 days up here for the Northeast, but it's mostly this pocket here we're concerned about. As it gets into the darker magentas, that's about an inch, and they've already seen a ton for portions of Texas, I believe, and maybe some surrounding regions. But we have almost an inch, I would say 3/4 of an inch at least, half an inch to 3/4 of an inch expected for all of these areas through Texas, southern Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, Kentucky, Tennessee, northern Mississippi, southern Indiana, and Illinois there. Very, very impactful situation here because they've already seen pretty catastrophic amounts for some areas, and we're already seeing so much more on the way on top of that. I can remember it was either last winter or the winter before, where for some reason the later part of the winter was featuring these very, very mixed storms where there would be portions of freezing rain, snowfall, rain underneath. It was this very messy storm, so they featured a lot of freezing rain, but they did feature snowfall, which this time around we're not. So very, very different in a way as well. More freezing rain, less snowfall here, uh, really than that event that I can remember. Certainly very concerning look, and I'll even move us over and take a look at the GFS, and you can see much less, but still, I mean, a quarter of an inch to half an inch. And remember, this model was showing none, and now it's totally just backed down and shown now what the European model and Canadian model are showing. Let's take a look at the Canadian here. We can see a little bit further south, but over an inch. So an inch to maybe an inch and a half in these areas here on this model. So a little bit more catastrophic from the Canadian model. Either way, I think all three of the models look extremely concerning. So it doesn't really matter which one actually ends up being correct. All three would be extremely impactful for all of these areas. Well over an inch of freezing rain for some areas um, due to what's already fallen and accumulated and what's on the way. Just an overall very, very concerning look. Now, the total snowfall through the next 10 days. Anywhere in the grays here is a dusting, if anything. Blues 2 to 6 inches of snowfall. Purple 6 to 10. Pinks 10 to 20 there. Pastel blue is going to be 20 to 35 inches of snowfall. And then your pastel pinks there are going to be 35 to 48 inches plus, which we're seeing some of that up here for our Cascades in here and your Canadian Rockies right here as well. We're seeing some of those kind of 35 to 48 inches plus amounts. Now, the GFS model, we're just going to walk through this a little bit. We do get that freezing rain again. We do get more snowfall here for Kentucky, West Virginia, Virginia, and even the Delmarva there. Certainly interesting to note. Um, as we continue this on, we see that storminess come to an end right around Saturday the 4th. We do get this nor'easter, which is, again, a very close call. We talked about this yesterday. I got so many comments in yesterday's video. I watched the whole thing. There's no snowfall, all this stuff. Well, if you watched the entire video, you would have heard me talk about how this, if it just gets pushed a little bit further west with the track of that low, would possibly bring a major snowstorm for a lot of these areas along the East Coast as there's enough cold there. So it's not about what the model is showing. It's about what is potentially there, and that's kind of what takes the experienced eye to be able to see. When you have a low this close to the coast and you have cold along the coast right here, you can kind of see that there is potential. Just like this is a good example. When the models are showing something, I hear this all the time, and it's true. It's not guaranteed that it's gonna happen. Just because a model's showing it doesn't mean it's gonna happen. But just because a model's not showing it equally doesn't mean that it's not going to happen, if that makes sense. So if a model's not showing it, that doesn't mean that it is not going to happen. So just because there's not a model connecting this low pressure system and the cold there doesn't mean that we won't see it eventually trend in that direction. It also obviously doesn't mean that it will either. Okay, so the odds are lower than 50%, but there is the possibility. Anything's possible, truly, but the possibility is certainly there, and that's what I feature mostly on this channel is talking about the possibilities. Because really, if I only talked about what was a sure thing, what was going to happen, only about 2 or 3 days out, giving you guys the forecast of exactly what's going to guaranteed happen because everything's come together, then why would you ever choose my channel? That's a good question because there's plenty of people better at doing that at the National Weather Service and possibly even other organizations that are better at that. So nobody would choose my channel because there's professionals that can tell you that. But what I'm doing is I'm showing you things that they won't show you, the possibilities in the long range outlook. And I trust everybody to be able to responsibly handle this information as a maybe and not a sure thing. Really, that is not what's usually been trusted of the public with weather information. They've been basically not not providing that information until it's a sure thing. I've gone ahead and said, "We will show it the second it becomes a possibility," and sure, a lot of these fizzle away, and that's kind of the byproduct of it. But, we oftentimes, when something does happen, see it much further out because we showed you the possibility before it was, a sure thing. I hope that makes sense. I hope you can appreciate it, and I hope you can handle it responsibly, without taking it as a guaranteed thing when it's 10 days out. I think we do a good enough job kinda specifying, take it with a grain of salt, there's only a possibility, et cetera, but you can't really, uh you can't get everybody to take it that way. People will see things and obviously freak out, and that's just part of it. But I believe that about 95+% of you do take it as what it is, just a possibility. I just want to get that out of the way. So we see that move out, still not connecting there. Again, only a possibility. We do see a low develop here, and this is an interesting look because we do have this cold front underneath. We do have a very clear indication of a warm front here, which again would cause this warm sector to occur. Swinging cold front underneath. This could bring certainly some severe weather here across these areas south of the low. I would definitely be watching for that around the 10th there of February. And then we see a colder air mass move in right around this time. We see some precipitation moving south of that. But we do see a colder air mass here along the eastern United States, especially right around the 12th. No snowfall connects with that until we get to about this point where there is a minor snow system that this model indicates develops off the coast. And this is right around the 15th, so take that with a grain of salt. It's extremely far out. But we do get basically eventually into a pattern that does feature the most cold being over the east, actually, here towards the end, right around the 16th of February. There is some warmth overall out west, and this looks extremely favorable to me, but this is extremely far out, and that's the problem. We need to take it with a grain of salt. And honestly, the probability of this happening based on the track record here of the GFS model is not looking too hot. I'll say that. But we will continue to track it every day, as we always do. I just want to show you guys the Canadian model here because the Canadian model takes this ice storm to a whole nother level. We see extreme amounts of ice accumulating over the next 2 or 3 days, and then finally coming to an end after that. We do see in the long range that this model does have this nor'easter developing quite close to the coast here, bringing some precipitation to the Carolinas and Virginia, but it slides off the coast after that point, bringing no snowfall. Now, we do see this storm right around the 10th, just like all three of the models. It's occurring differently, though, but all three of the models pretty much have a low somewhere in here and a bit of a cold front look, although this is pretty minimal with the cold front look, honestly. And we don't really have that much of a warm front either, but I can see this precipitation really just getting swallowed up into the storm. It's very interesting. We see that rising up with the storm. Definitely a lot of energy moving onto the East Coast. This would be an extremely warm, extremely humid day for February, and also possibly a lot of thunderstorms, especially in this sector here, maybe even this sector here. So the Mid-Atlantic and Southeast, we would be watching for that around the 10th, and all three of the models show it at this point. Now, as we move on to our European model ensemble model here, we see the temperature anomalies. This southeast ridge here has kind of been our troublemaker all winter long, really diverting all snowfall and cold from the east for the most part. And at times it flares up like this, where it's rising all the way up the East Coast, and this is the most troublesome look. We have cold centered over the east, but look at that. This southeast ridge is disrupting it for at least half the time that the cool down is here. We do see that Saturday ends up being an extremely cold day along the eastern seaboard, so that's certainly worth noting. Mostly warmth out west during this time for the first couple days of February. But then look, the cold returns by the time we're reaching about the 7th. We see the warmth return out east here, and then we're basically right back where we started. And then long range, what trends in is more cold out west around the 15th, and more of this rising warmth here uh, along the east. So much of what we've seen all winter long is expected to continue according to this European ensemble model. I hope all of this makes sense. Be sure to subscribe because we will be uploading every single day, just like always. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we do upload so you never miss one. We're going to be going over all of these storms, and I hope that we're going to hit somewhat of an active period at some point during this winter, so there's something exciting to talk about. If that does occur again, we will be the first to see it and show it. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Also, like the video if you did enjoy it, leave a comment down below, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video.